according to the crowd, I may have to leave a bit early, so hopefully this will keep on recording. So yeah, welcome everyone to the third meeting of the whatever association is. The agenda was supposed to be approve the constitution and assign roles for this election phase, but it looks like we need to discuss a bit more about the constitution because there are some political concerns and.
I'm just like to say I'm loving Finn's headset, by the way. Very, very Airwolf. It's,
standard Friday gear.
I see Brian's been able to join us. That's fabulous.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Just trying to let Zoom use my camera. I've lost the permission setting, but let's see if it tries.
No worries.
Again. But yeah, I mean, just as I put in the chat, hopefully I can just present some of the concerns, and just to reiterate, it's absolutely not a sort of, oh my god, this is all terrible. It's merely just saying, look, let's make sure there's a clear scope that we're not sort of, well, no one's treading on toes. Like equally, that we're not trying to in Scottish association doing things that actually are a better place for the UK and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think most of it's more really about the perception of people who almost aren't in the know, like, because there's the natural assumption would be, oh well, UK, well obviously that's the overarching umbrella organisation. That would be the sort of position of and the risk that might therefore involve, and whether that could negatively impact the community in Scotland. But the overall aspiration of saying, hey, we want to improve marketing in Drupal, hey, absolutely on board with that. That's cool. So yeah.
I mean, in terms of name, I think somebody said like quite a few weeks ago now, and I can't remember who it was, to my shame. I'd have to go and look at recordings. But I'm pretty sure somebody said something along the lines of, does it have to have a country name in it, or why don't we just call it Promote Drupal? And I still think that's not at all a bad idea. If in terms of, well, it does exactly what it says on the tin, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, that's a very valid point, valid suggestion. Yeah.
I mean, how do other people feel about that in terms of like the naming of stuff? Zoom is doing weird things to me.
I have no particular concerns around any name really. I think the name to me is less important than the fact that it exists. Yeah. The activities happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Unless we call it Dave's Club. Which probably wouldn't work so well.
No.
I think the same. The name is not important as long as there is something in England that promotes, and that's what we are trying to do, right? If we are trying to do as well on the other regions, if the name is going to cause bad feelings or things like that, we probably should try to avoid to steer.
Are we looking for it to encompass England and Wales, or just England?
Well, my original reasoning behind it was, and this was, my original thinking behind it was to promote Drupal in the United Kingdom as a whole, and especially since when I spoke to Duncan, he in the Drupal Scotland case said that they didn't really have an awful lot of time or energy to engage in the marketing side of Drupal, so something doing that would be useful to them as well. I mean, ideally, I'd like, personally speaking, I'd like to see something that serves all four countries, dare I say, currently part of the union.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason for a Drupal marketing effort to have to stay in any particular location or be particularly focused towards any location. I think if there's a good IT conference in Glasgow that we felt Drupal should be promoted at, it would be nice to be able to go up to Glasgow without upsetting anybody. Same goes for Belfast and Cardiff and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because there's other aspects like the Channel Islands and Isle of Man. We're not considering those. They're not part of the UK anyway.
No.
No, but equally, if we wanted to, go over as our local-ish, nationalist-ish kind of body, we might want to go over and do things at DrupalCon Amsterdam or wherever else. So that's kind of where this discussion came out, right? All the associations were meeting, and there wasn't any representative from the UK.
Yeah, that was exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Were there any representatives from Scotland at that point at that meeting?
There weren't. Duncan did say that he would love to have gone, but the problem was, I think, that nobody had the time or the budget.
Sure.
To pay their funding to Scotland. So. But then that's kind of the point, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Personally, I'm sort of more in favour of it as sort of leaving it loose, but having agreements with anyone who's worried, like Scotland, like saying, look, we're not. The point of this is not to step on any toes, but actually we'd be, I don't know, defining the borders in which you act and which you don't act seems to me a little bit sort of, I don't know, unless it's a massive blocker, then I'd rather not have to say.
There could be a circumstance, say someone wants to have a Drupal camp in Edinburgh and for some reason they don't have enough sponsorship, etc., and they decide to cancel it, maybe with a bigger organization, we could cover the slack and actually have the show go on anyway.
I mean, I guess the same thing happens between the global Drupal association, for want of a better word, and local associations, right? I mean, Rachel, perhaps you're best placed to answer this, but I mean, if there's obviously concerns around that, but if a local association, has issues, does the global Drupal association come in and help where it's needed and have that dialogue? Oh, Rachel's gone.
I think
what did you say?
You shouldn't have asked her to do something.
Sorry.
Just to make a comment on I think, as you said just there, yes, nailing down the kind of what the remit is and so on is crucial. So everyone's got a clear picture of what's expected. And I think one of the things that was raised in terms of scope, if you like, was that there were factors in the Constitution that sounded more like the remit of a national organisation than more of a marketing support, if you like. I think it's what struck us as we discussed it in the latest sort of meeting was perhaps something that's suffering or complicating matters is that while you've got Drupal Scotland, say Drupal Ireland, there isn't a Drupal England. And I guess the question there is whether there's an element of it. Is there a feeling or perception that, in fact, Drupal UK also fills the needs of what Drupal England or Drupal England and Wales or whatever might be? Because it sort of feels like maybe there's a missing link, or in that question, like hypothetically, would it be that actually it makes sense to have a Drupal England, Wales, whatever it might be, and then that all of those national organisations together are collaborating and working together as for this level of stuff, the marketing. That's where Drupal UK is the combined efforts of that.
I think that's kind of what's happening anyway. But it's well, Drupal Ireland, unfortunately, is. I spoke to Stella right at the start of this, and she was basically like, "Everyone's knackered, no one's doing anything." So I think at the moment, unfortunately, there isn't really a Drupal Ireland, which is a shame. But at the same time, they said, "Well, look, keep us posted. We're super interested in anything that happens." I think in terms of Drupal England or Drupal England and Wales, that ship's kind of sailed a little bit insofar as the Drupal Camp London is a standalone organisation and is probably the event that a Drupal England and Wales might organise and doesn't need to organise it because it's already a standalone institution and it's doing a good job. There's no reason to fiddle with it. And there's a few other fairly decent sized groups around like Drupal Northwest and things like that. So there's successful groups in and around England and Wales already that kind of make it feel like Drupal England and Wales isn't particularly necessary. But I mean, one of the things that Michel from OneShoe was very keen to push, because he's now a Drupal Association board member, was getting all the countries to start marketing Drupal as well. So that was like one of his kind of key messages in that association meetup, was like, we've got to market this product. We can't just sort of, just sit around building something and not talking about it. And so that was kind of point of this. Whether or not somebody wants to set up a Drupal England and Wales is a whole other conversation and not one that I intended to start. For me, this was about representation at Drupal Association kind of meetings, like the one that I was party to last time, for one, and for two, getting that marketing going. And I think that's kind of the critical point, and that's why I'm kind of totally comfortable if we stop talking about the UK in any way, shape, or form in the name, as I say, and just call it Promote Drupal and just go with that, because and I think it'd be interesting to dig into the detail, because if you've read into parts of the structure, things that cause uncertainty, they will cause other people uncertainty as well. And I think actually discussing those points of detail, like as you mentioned earlier, Brian, the fact that there's an event manager at all is arguably not a role that a marketing association needs, because the events exist already, and we're not in the business of organising events. We're in the business of attending events to promote Drupal and trying to get our foot in the door in existing events.
Yeah. And I think, firstly, just say, I totally appreciate how these came about. I appreciate this has been based on documents and, your sort of, what's the term? Stock documents, templated things and so on to kick things off. Yeah. But yeah, I think some of the aspects about the roles, and in particular the events and community liaison, so had that suggestion that the remit was sounding like something beyond the promotion and marketing. And I think maybe, for example, the community liaison might be more phrased as I appreciate that there's an external aspect too, but from an internal, so UK perspective, it might be more of a user group or regional group, something liaison. Yeah. The who's leading point with the points of contact from groups around the UK, whether they're a national or a tiny local one that sort of acts on its own.
Which is actually what is written underneath in terms of duties. So if it's just a role title, I mean, what would you say? Community liaison manager. What would you say? Group coordinator. I don't know.
To be fair, I think it's not actually that community liaison manager is necessarily a bad title. I think it's more how it initially came across in the context of when you look at community in other uses around Drupal. Because obviously the immediate thought, well, certainly for me anyway, when I hear community is, hey, it's all of us. That it is that every specific person who uses Drupal, we're all part of that community. And so I think in that vein, it sort of sounded like it, could come across and give that perception externally of, oh, well, if I want to contact someone about Drupal in Scotland, then I should contact the Drupal UK Community Liaison Manager.
Yeah.
And actually, that just puts burden on that person, poor person who's dealing with things that they don't need to be dealing with in the first place.
So I suppose that comes back to the name of the organisation again, doesn't it? Because if you promote Drupal Community Liaison Manager, you're not going to call them to speak to Scotland.
Yeah. So perhaps just merely in terms of clarifying that scope for everyone, doing something like Promote Drupal, which is obviously a UK-based entity, maybe does a hell of a lot of what we need. And the events one, that's not to say there isn't necessarily someone who does things relating to events that happen in the UK. Like, that's a person, if you're running an event, then, do you need some marketing materials or that sort of thing? Then that's not to say there's no role relating to events, but again, when it comes to, in the context of Promote Drupal event manager, well, actually, it kind of starts making sense to me already in that way.
Well, it's still controversial, something like still having the name, like Promote UK Drupal Association will still be controversial? Or I'm not saying that I'm against or in favor, just having that.
I think anything involving the words UK is going to end up controversial and become political.
Right. Okay.
Do we have a copy of the Scotland Constitution or whatever the document that the Scottish Association is based on?
I'm sure it's on their website.
I'd have to say I don't immediately have that to hand where I am right now. But I can, if there isn't an immediately visible link, I can certainly share it in the Slack channel.
I mean, I'd love to just have a look and compare, and if Scotland's got everything we need to set something similar up, I mean, it'd be good to make it, dovetail nicely and, just look and also expose any areas where, the toe stepping thing becomes an issue.
Would it make sense at this point to go through the document of the constitution that we have at the moment and maybe highlight the things that we need to change and have that as a goal?
That sounds fun. Yeah.
Sorry, Finn, I think I interrupted you. You wanted to say something.
I think this is fine. My next question was just going to be, what is the Scottish Association doing at the moment in terms of activities that tie into this? Like, do you have membership? Do you take money? Are you is this an active kind of?
So to summarize the key things, essentially there's Drupal Camp, which will be in November. There's local meetups, especially in Edinburgh. They've been on and off elsewhere, but Edinburgh's been the most consistent in terms of regular meetups and talks. There's the business group that it is independent deliberately, but we're looking at having a representative from that group on the Scottish Drupal Scotland Committee. And that business group comprises, for example, people from a couple of universities, Scottish Natural Heritage, a big Drupal user, for example. So some organisations from quite spread across Scotland. Mm-hmm. So those are the main ones. We don't take a membership fee. The income is essentially from the conference, the Drupal Camp Scotland. Yeah. And a lot of support comes from places like Edinburgh University, for example, providing venues and so on, at sort of ranging from free for meetups to fairly reasonable cost for things like the Drupal Camp. So yeah.
I mean, that's really useful to know, just to understand the kind of nature of the activities and where, suddenly a Drupal UK association may impinge upon some of those activities. I can kind of see the concerns there. Thanks.
I will just have a quick look, unless it was on that link there, the Drupal Scotland, but I will just have a quick look otherwise if I do have immediate access to grab the
Sure.
constitution for you.
No rush on my part, but I'd be interested to look through it at some point.
Yeah, at the very least, as I say, I can chuck it into the Slack channel for you, or get Duncan to. So yeah.
So shall we go through the constitution and just highlight areas that might want to be changed or reviewed or scrapped, or based on these conversations?
Does anyone have the document?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've just reviewed it, and I've got as far as you can skip. I don't think there's anything controversial until you get down to code of conduct, other rules, regulations, and requirements.
Would you mind to share someone to share his screen with the document?
Yeah, I can do that. If I can.
And then we do some live editing.
I mean, one comment I just made only a couple of hours ago, which might be slightly controversial, but maybe worth thinking about as a general principle. I'm quite keen for these kind of things to be really low, lightweight. And so I was just reading through the duties of the officers, for example. They're long and specific, and we removed those out into another document, a handbook type thing. Then that potentially could be something else. Oh my gosh, this is a different document.
This is the one. This is the one that was posted to me. Is that the right document or the wrong one?
That's not the constitution. That's the initial discussion doc, which has led to the one which you can find in the chat now, which is much drier, more legally, and thankfully shorter.
There's a Zoom
and actually, in fairness, the draft constitution has less things that suggested potential controversy or issue.
Mainly because the constitution is basically me just taking the standard UK association model constitution and copying and pasting the roles and a few other bits and pieces based on discussion from the discussion doc into it. So it's much drier. It deliberately doesn't make a lot of decisions on the basis that the whole point of electing a board is that they will make those decisions. So it's really just the operating rules.
So, and in that, in that vein, I was thinking if you removed the duties of the officers, which are quite specific, out into another document, which made it easier to amend and evolve those kind of things, which may need to change from month to month, year to year, without necessarily having a massive vote on changing the constitution. You can have a lighter weight constitution and evolve the details as they need to be, like through discussion with other neighbouring associations and such. But I don't know whether is that something that's already been thought about, Greg? I mean, did you kind of did this?
The only thing I would say about that is that maybe it should be hard to change those roles, given that we're already seeing from Brian's contributions that those roles can be controversial.
That's a reason to be able to change them, isn't it?
Yeah, but you might want to be able to. You might want that change to not be just something the board can do, if that makes sense.
I would suggest maybe there's a balancing point there of saying, well, it's not all the fine nitty-gritty points, but that each role there is this role, and the overall remit, this is the purpose of it. So if it can be clearly stated in one or two bullet points, say this is the basic remit, then perhaps that might help while making it a bit of a lighter weight document overall.
No, it could cut either way. I get. Yeah, I think you're right, Brian, that this could be lighter. I mean, this was just a copy and paste job from the original document that Michelle and various other people in the Dutch Drupal Association came up with as a template. So if we want to shorten this, we could certainly shorten it. I can see it going both ways in terms of what Finn was saying. On one, it'd be a pain in the ass if you have to have a general meeting every time you want to change the constitution. On the other hand, if you can change the roles of office without a general meeting, that feels a bit weird too.
But not necessarily the roles, but the duties of
The
those
duties,
roles.
right? Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
specific, like I don't know, invoice sponsors and exhibitors. I mean, that's the duty of the sponsor manager. We might decide that actually the finance person should do that, the treasurer should do that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And like if it's hard coded into our constitution, that's a bit of a. It just feels a
Fair point.
It feels like we might be creating more bureaucracy than we need at this point, at least. And therefore, there's more specifics that we need to all agree on in order to get this passed.
Can I just ask a question just broadly? Does anyone feel that we don't need an event manager at all, or does anyone oppose the idea that we don't need an event manager at all?
We were talking that we are not supposed to be organizing events, right?
Yeah.
I mean, speaking as someone who arranged events in Oxford, I would have loved there to be a local association with which I could liaise on arranging the Oxford Drupal Camp and also on the local meetups. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you don't have that role, then there is no support for those local smaller camps and meetups, and so they probably won't happen. And if we're hoping that is one of the outcomes of of having this organisation, then I think the inability or the lack of defined resource to be able to help to drive those events isn't going to happen, which I think would be a shame, because I think there is a bit of a vacuum outside of London
and Scotland.
And Scotland, obviously. That means that it's really hard for smaller communities of developers to get up and running with an event, whereas with this organization should be something that helps them with guidance, hands-on support when necessary, potential fundraising. Again, goes back to the constitution, really.
What if we called it event support manager?
That is exactly what I was about to say.
Minds think alike.
Literally, that's what I was going to say, because I think it's not about the organising of events. It's about helping people who need support in putting something together, and equally, that's not to say that it wouldn't be a case of, hey, look, there's some great marketing materials or things like that, and a very well established entity, even Drupal Camp London might say, hey, actually, look, you've got some great marketing stuff. Shall we put that up in the venue here? So I think that sounds good. I think it's not that there's nothing at all. Sorry, let me start that sentence. It's not that there shouldn't be some role involving events. I think it's merely some of the specifics of those bullet points, which are probably not relevant to this particular aim. That's all.
Yeah.
Everyone agreed on that?
Yeah.
Seems like it.
No objection.
Cool.
So, I mean, back to Finn's original point, will this be easier to get through if we take the specifics out? Or will it make people more comfortable if the specifics are specific, but everybody's on board with them? What's the best way to deal with this?
Maybe having them as an appendix to the Constitution or something. So you've got the more details about the operational guidebook rather than the overall. I hadn't considered it, but I think it's a good idea.
And is that something then we could collaborate on with other associations and obviously specifically Drupal Scotland, in terms of trying to create a common playbook for roles? And I don't know if that's. I'm assuming that a lot of these roles that we're talking about are have similar duties across every Drupal association, or
I mean a lot of them were copied and pasted from the Dutch document in the first place.
I mean, I think a lot of it will depend on scale, won't it, as to this, whether we've already mentioned maybe merging certain roles and stuff, and and the specific duties of that role will depend on the scale of the organisation and how much activity is going on.
Suppose the association kind of, the global association kind of owns, quote unquote, the roles as a template, as a boilerplate at the moment, because that's where these came from. But we can probably feed into that via Rachel and others.
If we're not going to organise events, then yeah, that event support event manager becomes event support manager, sure.
Yeah.
And then you can take some of the roles out of there, create and implement event plans and concepts. Bye. And the next one.
I guess some of the responsibilities will be crossed between marketing manager and the event support manager, right? Because at the end, what we are doing maybe is just getting the money and supporting whatever community, and that's probably part of the marketing manager responsibility.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but an event support manager, an event support manager, for example, could have gained knowledge of ticketing and you know, sort of, and all sorts of things, and which is quite specialist in a sense. I mean, I know because I'm working a lot with ticketing and events at the moment. So yeah, I think it's quite a specialist. It's a sort of specialist role, but it's not really it's not so much a marketing role. It's a separate role.
I do agree. It does feel, you know, there's someone who has the knowledge of, oh, do you know what, we need to do this for the event. Can you provide any guidance on how we go about, I mean, what was I saw something like permits, like do we need a permit for X, or is there anything we should be thinking about that we might not have thought of? So I think, yeah, it's definitely great to have that sort of resource on hand. Equally,
okay.
Trying to get something off the ground and you've not done it before. I mean, we've actually used, for a couple of the Drupal camps in the past, we've actually used an event, like a professional event manager sort of thing, to do a whole pile of the stuff. And it's like, right, look, you know what you're doing, you're professional, boom. And it's great. So
I'm currently working with professional events managers on one of the projects, and I'm writing an event system for a big pub company at the moment. So it all fits together. So yes, but it is a specialist role. I mean, the guy who organises Little Chill and everything, campfire convention stuff, he knows, he's got it all in his brain bank and his knowledge bank.
Yeah,
and you build that up over time.
That's it. And I think, to be fair, a lot of those duties that are listed might be more a case of support. Yes, it's a support local groups within the UK, groups within the UK in setting up and running events, which may include support in the following areas. And to be honest, most of those things then just remain. But it just emphasises it's about providing help with that, not having to do everything.
Yeah,
give them some guidance and some advice and help and mentoring, or if they've not done planning at that level.
Returning to Finn's original point, I've made a separate document which has the working title of Marketing Association Roles, which I've just added to his comment there. I'll stick it in the chat here as well. It's just the whole of 7 copied and pasted.
I think it does make good sense to have it as a separate. Sorry, I talked over you there. Go ahead.
That's all right. I was just going to say, that being the case, does anyone mind if I basically remove section 7 entirely from this document?
No. I mean, I was just going to comment basically that in another association I'm part of, the good old Proprietors Association from Massive Block of Flats, is we actually did quite a similar thing with the recent constitution update. Certain things were pulled out into separate documents. They still needed the same level of approval to change and put in place in the first place. But it means that when they do get changed, you're only looking at that subset. And you're not getting people suddenly picking up on some other point in the main constitution that they say, oh, we should change it, and that no, we're just trying to change this document. That's the scope. So I think it makes good sense to have it in a separate one like that.
I used to run a housing cooperative, and we split our constitution and into separate groups for that very reason. That every time we tried to change one line of the constitution, somebody would have a go at some other part of it. And by breaking it out into sections, they didn't get the opportunity to do that.
I think if we're going to have it separate, that number 7 still stays, should just reference the other document. It's to say the duties of the officers are defined in document X.
I just added that to 5, management. Individual role responsibilities may be found in the roles document with a link. Or do you think,
yep,
or do you think is that okay?
Just going to have to read number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 now, though. Saves you the renumbering, but I'm sure that's fine. Yeah.
Shall I delete this section then?
Yeah.
Go for it. So now we can look at
the first major constitutional change of the day.
Actually, arguably, depends on your point of view. They've been busy. Well, it just got shorter, which is good news.
So do we need now a reference to that second document, or we are good without?
Yeah, so section 5.c, Greg's added a link to that document and a reference to role responsibilities.
Right, I see. Now,
Yeah, that makes sense.
So regarding the events support manager, there is a general event organisers working group on Drupal.org, which, as organisers of organisers of Drupal Camp London, for instance, we're heavily involved with, but also I love a lot of other camps globally, Bad Camp, Florida Camp, etc., are actively on there as well. So that's another point for people to be pointed to, basically, which I've stuck in the document anyway.
Cool, yeah, I saw the comment. Thanks for that. Shall we park roles for the moment and go through everything else? Because we can always go take roles offline and give Brian a chance to go and discuss it with the Drupal Scotland guys when it's a bit more tidy as well.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So are we going to start at the top and just go down, see if anyone's got any issues?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Name. Right, scrub that one.
Start at the bottom and go up.
Aims.
Oh, thanks, Alex.
Sorry, share my screen and.
I mean, on the name, does anyone object to using Promote Drupal as a working name, not necessarily, but just as something other than TBD?
No, I have no objection.
Yeah, Promote Drupal. It's fine.
Should someone else be sharing this than Alex, in case he's got to disappear, or you not? As your afternoon changed, Alex, you said you might have to drop out.
I may have to drop, so if someone else can share instead of me.
Might make sense. I can't because I'm the Zoom client on Linux isn't as fancy schmancy as all you Mac people have.
I'm not a Mac person. I'm on a Windows PC.
Or Windows, yeah. Okay.
I'm on Linux too. I think I can share though.
Well, I can share my whole desktop, but I didn't really.
Oh, you can't share Windows?
No, it says whole desktop, or I can do whiteboard. Might be just because I'm not running Ubuntu or something.
I think Greg's set up as co-host, isn't he, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, it's because of the role or because of the maybe. Let me see.
Finn's got it.
Well,
Finn's on
sharing.
the case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Finn.
great. So yeah, names and no problem. Anyone problems for this temporary or working title of Promote Drupal?
Yep.
No, that's fine.
So the aims, I had to read through those earlier. I had no objections to any of the aims.
No.
Doesn't seem to be any kind of commenting on that level.
No, I mean the overall aims sound great. We had no issue with that.
The one thing I did wonder, Brian, is that the mention of UK in the aims. Promote Drupal at the national level within the UK. Like, that's the that's the right?
And I think just to give an example, actually, it's like, let's say, all right, organization's all set up and here's the website and it says promote Drupal and it says at the top, our main aim is to promote Drupal in the UK. That's cool. It's merely that kind of the way in which potentially people might just make that assumption. Oh, well, I should go there.
It's those first impressions. Yeah.
How about working in partnership with Drupal Scotland Association as well, mentioned in it?
Yeah, I'm sure appropriate signposting for the relevant websites and documents.
I wonder if we make it too generic, we run the risk of going beyond UK.
I think in fairness,
Okay, provide signposting for new Drupal users and talent and regional Drupal groups. Solves the Scotland issue.
I think in fairness, it's got what groups they could join, who local content. I think in fairness, it doesn't seem.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
I don't think that's contentious, and
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
To be fair, the second bullet point, just purely in terms of taking some words out, could just say promote Drupal within the UK. It's not.
Yeah.
Actually,
because that's the purpose.
The title of the document itself, if you go up, you will see that it's Association for Marketing Drupal in the UK, and the title of the document itself is Drupal in the UK, right? Should we keep that?
I think that could be promote Drupal associate, just promote Drupal constitution if we're settled on the name. At least for now, as a working title, it can just simply be that.
That's it.
Yeah.
Promote Drupal, yeah. And the title of the document itself, because it's Marketing Drupal in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, let's change that as well.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, but sort of on the point of sort of like losing the focus of where we are. Just if at some point the Scottish Drupal Association decided they didn't mind the letters UK in the name, would other people prefer it to say promote Drupal in the UK or something like that? Does that actually matter?
I think is UK, right? Because like we are not promoting in Europe or US or India. We are in the UK.
I don't think it matters because I think the Constitution does it in a way. It allows it to be more flexible.
Yeah, and by definition of where we're going to be promoting the the association and the activities of the association are going to be UK centric. So, I don't think anyone from Indonesia is going to get confused thinking they should be coming to promote Drupal.
I mean, putting on a purely I'm someone who does Drupal within the UK hat, I think the context in which people will see it will be associated with the UK.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be clear in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Coming on down to a comment that I made originally, the association will seek to avoid collecting money on behalf of other UK-based groups. Now, I understand the motivation for this is to avoid stepping on toes of any groups that are collecting money.
Yeah, it's to avoid financial problems. Actually,
Yeah,
I would remove it. Or no, sorry, I'd leave it in. I'd leave it in for certain. Yeah. Not remove it. Yeah, you don't want to do it. You don't want to collect money on behalf of other groups. Yeah.
Yeah, from a purely administrative perspective, if you want to say no, you're supposed to give it over there. Yeah.
I mean, back to my original motivation. Does that mean if you know, if we haven't got a bank account to put on an event, but we need one in order to take money for it and stuff, then like, does that still leave it open for Promote Drupal UK to help organise that event and, you know, or does that mean that any event that needs a bank account has to be set up as a separate, you know, association essentially or some such?
The way I understand that that clause is that it literally seeks to avoid. It's like, you know, it's the least preferred route. But if I don't know, you know, a Drupal association in Yorkshire came to us and said, look, we want to put on a Drupal camp, but we need you to manage the ticketing for us. I don't think that clause precludes us doing it if the board agrees that that's what we need to do to support the event.
It's not excluding it. It's not saying you're never going to do it. It just says you try and avoid it wherever possible. That's fair enough.
Okay, that makes more sense. I think. I wonder if that can be clearer.
Not using legal language. I can't see. If you want, I can throw it past a friend of mine who's a lawyer and see if she can couch it. But
I don't think that would expedite things.
No.
I'm fine. I'm sure we can clarify that going forward, and when it becomes an issue, you know, we can cover it at that point. Yeah.
It would be something for any sitting board to make a case-by-case decision on, wouldn't it? Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I just know that that's one of the blockers. That was one of the kind of original blockers to setting up events from my perspective.
But if somebody approached the event support manager and said, we don't have a bank account, they can bring that to the board and say, I know we said we would seek to avoid to collect money on behalf of the UK-based groups, but these guys are stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Potentially, it's the sort of thing that somewhere with the event support role, there could be a something along the vague lines of providing guidance on approach, you know, support on potential approaches for taking money when a group doesn't have a bank account, or it might be getting a bit over specific, but I think it's probably less something for this than more that, you know, in the sense on the website is, or in material that's going to little local groups, is that that's not to say don't make them aware there might be some options. You know, don't feel stuck.
Yeah, we can cross those bridges when we come to
I don't think
them,
it needs to be done here. I think you're right. The seek to avoid kind of says it's not the aim.
Yeah. It doesn't say absolutely avoid. Okay. Any other comments on any of those avoidance tactics? Powers. Raise money, open bank accounts, appoint direct and indirect volunteers, organise courses and events, work with other groups, do anything. Why don't we just leave it with point F? But yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Do anything.
Do anything that's lawful which helps it fulfill its aims. Yeah.
Don't ask me. I copied and pasted that.
I mean, the only one potentially, having discussed the event coordinator role, whether we change the organised courses and events to, supporting the organisation of course events. I mean, it gets quite vague, but
I mean, again, I think events are key, and I think events are where this organisation will be able to provide key support. I mean, there's lots of things that could be happening with a little bit of support from an organisation that can signpost people and provide resources or facilitate or money. Especially when you're talking about sort of global training days and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How about something more like facilitate courses and events? It's not so much a direct
Yeah,
organising.
that's a good idea. Facilitate means, it's much more general. Yeah, that works.
And I don't think it precludes the ability to ever run some kind of promote Drupal event. I'm not, but it's not the key aim. And
so if somebody wants to run courses, you can advise them because that's facilitating it. But you don't have to sit there and organise it. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's some D, isn't it?
Yeah. Is somebody else making edits for this, or is that my job?
I can do that. Don't worry.
I was going to say somebody editing it.
So we settled on facilitate then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, practically it's kind of a moot point because F allows us to do anything.
Yeah.
That might trumps Article 2.
Yeah. But yeah, membership.
Yeah.
But there says organisation here in C, and I just put a comment there saying that let's probably just remove that because it sounds like a member should be any person who is interested in helping the association.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it might be. You might have the reason it's in there is you might have company memberships. The Drupal Association does have company memberships.
Yeah, I suggest that's a complexity that we might want to avoid at the moment.
Okay.
Initially, just because then who's voting? The company or the person or both? Do they get two votes? There's one. Yeah.
You end up as a Labour Party, and we don't want to go that way.
I think initially, just we could add tiers of membership later that are maybe non-voting but supporting or sponsorship or whatever. As mentioned. But
shall I strike that then? Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
that should delete my comment as well. Actually, no, it doesn't. Sorry, I'll just resolve my comment. All of that's good as far as I can tell. So, yeah. Membership. Oh, sorry, management.
Change marketing. Is it? Oh, you changed to support manager. That's fine.
Was there still a question over the community liaison manager name?
I don't think so in the context of promote Drupal. I think Brian was more comfortable with that.
I think it I was just rethinking that, and I think in the context it does make pretty clear sense.
I put a comment here. What did I put? Might want to remove this for phase 1 at least. I know
yeah. That's because if you haven't got enough bodies, then you end up with people managing.
That concerns me because there's a really good reason why that's in there, and that is that you're trying to create a sustainable association. And if you let people take too many seats, you end up with burnout. And the whole purpose of the structure is to avoid burnout and too much sitting on any one person.
Yeah, leave that in.
Okay.
I take the point that practically it's a bit of a pain, but from a sustainability point of view, you get off on the wrong foot if you take it out.
Okay.
Well, that's just this is not me speaking per se. I've never done this before, but that was the specific advice from the other local associations that were kind of negotiating the original template document.
Yeah.
I guess my only question would be whether there needs to be a provision for temporarily stepping in some form. But I totally get the motivation for why that's there and agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on Greg's point, the downside of having the ability to temporarily step in is, there isn't anything quite as permanent as a temporary solution. And if you don't have an active vacancy because someone's doing it, then the chances are they'll probably just keep doing it and the vacancy will never be filled.
Yeah.
So, in the interest, exactly as Greg said, the whole purpose of this is to avoid the kind of fatigue and burnout that makes it hard for small communities and associations to you know,
Yeah.
to become an unsustained activity.
It's a good point.
To be fair,
This
there
is
point
why
J&K, so
Yeah,
it's why the Midlands doesn't have a user group.
yeah.
People keep stepping up and they want to do everything, and elbow everybody out of the way. I know how to do this right. Then they get burnt out after about 3 meetings. So.
On G, I suggested that maybe that should say 51% instead of 4,
Yeah.
because if, say, there is vacant positions and there's only like, you know, 6 people or 5 people at that point, then you might just want like half of the current, you know, over half of the current board present.
Yeah.
Sounds sensible to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show of hands, that sounds reasonable as long as people have got video if they're doing remote calls.
Wait a second though. Are we yeah. What about people with no arms?
I mean, I was going to raise the inclusivity question.
No.
Honestly.
I admit it had occurred to me too.
Shall we?
Do it all via Zoom, couldn't you?
Is voting API working?
Can you raise your hand?
So, I mean, if it comes to it, it could be show of hands or other appropriately agreed mechanism.
Yeah.
You need to say show of hands at all.
Thumbs up.
Voting shall occur at board meetings. If there is a tied vote, then the chairperson will have a second.
Yeah. In fairness, it's at a board meeting. There's maximum 7 people, so I think you can figure out amongst the board an appropriate way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
How's that?
Voting will occur at board meetings using an appropriate method. If there is a tied vote, then the chairperson shall have a second vote.
Perfect.
So trial by combat will be appropriate.
Awesome.
If the board's comfortable with that, then.
Yep.
Just please make sure you stream it.
That's true. It's only a flesh wound.
I mean, it's an interesting way to promote Drupal. It could take off.
Fortnite challenge or something.
So a 2/3 majority vote to remove an officer. That sounds like a reasonably higher level of percentage.
That's pretty normal. That is pretty normal.
I'm just trying to think of an extreme case that would nullify that, but if it was 3 out of 4, that's all right. If there's only 3 left,
then something's gone wrong.
You've really got a bigger problem. So you're probably not trying to get rid of anyone else by that point.
No.
So,
if someone breached like the Drupal Code of Conduct and we as a CWG are investigating it, would they then be postponed from being on the board, or how would that work?
That's a good question. Do we want something in there about?
That's a good question.
Well, it's very nice.
Yeah, about respecting the wishes of the community working group.
Something perhaps you're thinking along the lines of disciplinary action carried out at a worldwide level.
Yeah. So let's say somebody
may be carried through.
Yeah. So let's say somebody, for example, gets in trouble for being abusive to somebody at a DrupalCon somewhere, and the community working group decrees they can't have any involvement anymore in any community activity. Should our constitution basically say that the board is obliged to kick that person off?
Yeah, if they're not allowed to have any leadership role within the Drupal community, then they should be removed because this is a leadership role.
Yeah.
But doesn't
would that be covered by the membership, point E of membership, by the Drupal Code of Conduct?
Good point.
Oh, yeah,
but the one where they will get removed if they breach the Code of Conduct.
Yeah, that's true.
I think perhaps, I don't know if this is overkill, but perhaps that the management section would be cause to terminate a board member's membership will terminate their board position.
Or you could do it the other way round. You could say that it is a mandatory requirement to be a board member that you are a member of the association.
Yeah.
So then, so effectively, by definition, if you've been struck off as a member of the association, you're no longer eligible to be a board director.
Yeah.
So I think there is probably elections is where it says that you must be a member. If you lose eligibility to be a member, you
lose your board position
your board position is automatically terminated.
So with a breach of code of conduct, obviously we investigate that when that happens. So it'd have to be like a final result from the CWG if there's been a breach, because we do get a lot of hearsay reports. So perhaps it should be if the CWG have made a decision on whether they should not have a leadership role. Because if they breach something in the code of conduct, we'll investigate it, and if they've got a leadership role, by them breaching the code of conduct and it's been proven that they breached it, we'll be like, well, hey, you've breached the code of conduct. Here's the proof. You can't have a leadership role.
That's a good one. So if we make point E there, where it says members are expected to abide by the code of conduct, the failure to do so constitutes a good reason for termination of membership. The definition of failure to do so is that the community working group has ruled that you are in breach of the code of conduct.
Yeah.
Or just brackets after failure to do so. You could put as defined by the CWG.
Yeah, and failure to do so as defined by a ruling by the CWG.
Yeah.
We should be lawyers.
We wouldn't be allowed to do this if it wasn't billed to a client, though.
Wait, you guys aren't billing this?
How's that then?
I'm doing this for free?
Above.
Yeah.
Sounds
So
reasonable.
I suppose, like, you must be a member to be elected as an officer. It may be the management section as a final point, which is say, if your membership is terminated under 4E, your board position is automatically terminated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sensible.
And to be fair, that terminated in any way. So if they resign as a member for any reason, then they are by definition.
Yeah.
I'm just running this past George on the CWG, see what he thinks.
Cool.
Okay. Where are we down to?
No.
Did we cover all of those points? Everyone happy with everything else under management for now?
I think so.
Elections. Oh look, that's already. You must be a member to be elected as an officer.
Cool.
Did we? Is that? That's not.
I don't know. We've duplicated that. No.
It's just the other way around. Yeah. If you stop being a member, you stop being an officer. To ensure continuity, none of the 4 officers should be replaced. I was suggesting maybe that should be 51% again, just in case like the total number of officers changes.
Yeah. Future proof as well.
Yeah.
No officer may serve on the board for a period of longer than 3 years without facing an election. There's no limit. All of this seemed fine to me, to be honest. It seemed like standard stuff that was just sensible.
George has come back.
Oh, and interestingly, point F on the voting. So a suitable means of voting. Just
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should there be age restriction, like 16 or older, or something? There.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Why?
So
Yeah.
children. So we could have a. I actually started from the point of view of old farts like me. Really should not be available, or
To be
as long
elected
as
to
they're of
as an
sound
officer,
mind.
you should be of sound mind. Yeah.
Yeah. But it did make me think. Well, what about people need to be 13 years of age or older, sort of thing.
Well, I think if they manage to convince the community to
Yeah, I
elect,
was going to say. I mean, yeah. Quite honestly, yeah. I'd.
An 11-year-old years ago who was really
Yeah.
well in Drupal, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fairness, I suppose there is that whole point of purely thinking data stuff. You don't really want children's data to be dealt with, but it might be a case of you must be 13 years or older to be a member, because I think this is slightly different from like coming along to meetups. This is not to exclude a child from being brought along to a meetup or an event by the parent. Or
I'm not saying, I'm not trying to discourage youth or anything like that. I just don't want to, I just wonder if there's any legal thing that we need to take into
How about if you are a minor and you wish to be elected, you need parental consent?
yeah.
Well, I would suggest that we put that under membership. You need parental consent to be a member, which
maybe it's already there in the association membership. Shall I double check that then? I can do that.
I didn't see it in the section of membership.
But are we talking like general membership of the DA?
Membership of this particular
one, yeah.
Okay.
I think I suggest that we add an additional clause between B and C that says younger members are welcome, but minors need parental consent.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a thing last year or the year before for one of the code sprints done at CTI, and the office manager got very overexcited about could people be bringing their children along, could there be this or that, and the key reason was that there's an unlocked bar at CTI, so he was very concerned that we'd get in trouble like that.
Huh.
He was a bit officious in the first place. So.
We had a 2-week-old at Drupal Camp London last year.
Oh, they're the worst. Oh my God.
Terrible drinkers.
I trust them.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in France, I can take my daughter to the open bar rock concert. Nobody blinks. They hand her earplugs and say, "Have a nice time." Don't drink too much.
Make sure your hearing's not affected, but have all the booze you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have much time. I need to get off in a minute. So should we just quickly talk through the finance one, and then I'm happy with the rest of it.
Yeah.
But somebody else might have to take over screen sharing.
I think your point on 7A is absolutely valid, Finn, especially in light of the conversation we had earlier about potentially wanting to support another organisation.
Yeah.
So, is everyone happy with that wording as it's just been popped in by the anonymous HR called Finn?
Am I anonymous now? That's weird.
How do I accept that? There you go. No, you're anonymous. Your cursor's anonymous, but your edit is not, bizarrely.
Very odd. Yeah. Anyway, any money raising activities must avoid impacting in revenue streams of existing Drupal community groups at the time of formation.
Yeah. You happy with that, Brian?
Yeah.
So I'll remove the first version of this, shall I?
Of C.
Of C.
Go for it. Let's read what it says.
So well, the proposal would be to get rid of B and C and replace it with everything underneath. So any money, this bit I'm highlighting.
Okay. Any money-raising activities must avoid impacting the revenue stream of the existing Drupal community groups. To that end, the association must provide and publicise a clear means for other UK Drupal community groups to present themselves as active and seeking paid membership. The association and its representatives are obliged to inform prospective and actual subscribers of the existence of other organisations local to them, which have formally presented themselves to the association and propose a subscription to that organisation ahead of or as well as subscription to the association itself.
I think in a sense, to be fair, a subscription, the question in my mind is whether it's free or not. Because I think it's in the context that it's free, they've still been directed and said, oh, hey, look, you can join this group over there.
Yeah.
Happens to be free. And hey, all the better, actually. They might be all the more likely to say, well, great, I'll join them as well. But here, I'll join you because I can see why to do that.
Maybe we can make this even simpler and keep clause B as it is. So keep any money-raising activities, blah, 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 as a separate clause, because it's simpler. And then just put something like the association must provide and publicise a clear means for other community groups to present themselves as active stroke or seeking paid membership. And keep the rest of that. So basically that obligation to signpost effectively.
Yeah. I think that makes...
That's the spirit of things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just making sure that we don't forget that first and foremost we're signposting people to other groups where appropriate.
Yeah, I think
I probably don't need to have that last bit there. Is that just too much?
Yeah, I think it would be just as good without it.
I think in the context it says ahead of or as well as, it doesn't make a difference. I think it would only be relevant if it were specifically saying ahead of, full stop, like, if you see what I mean. So I think you could probably drop that sentence, that phrase.
Yeah.
How does that look?
Yeah, much shorter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any bank accounts that's opened in the association will be in the name of the association?
Yeah.
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 And there's some pretty standard AGM stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very happy with all that, and the special general meeting
stuff.
and the alterations as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And dissolution going to another, similar aimed association.
Yep.
That was super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it.
Right. Any objections to it as it currently stands?
No, it's good.
I think it's really clarified well.
Alex, you said you'd got a response back from CWG.
Yeah, that's the response.
And it says who and what body.
Well, it's got to be the chair, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be the chair.
But that's over to the responsibilities document. Let me just make a note in there against the chairperson. Chair, take action as required by the Drupal CWG.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's great. I suppose what I'm really interested in is, Brian, what's our feedback loop for Drupal Scotland? Is there a way that we can get this, get people to have another look?
What I'll do, I'll share it with the other committee members. I think we can send a response pretty quickly. I'll try to chivvy them along, but everyone's been fairly active. I think we actually had originally thought there was a longer time frame for this from something that cropped up, but I think everyone's got it in mind at the moment. So I'll chuck something straight over to them right now, saying, "Hey, look, here's the link. It's been updated. take a look, and we'll try to, if there's any other thoughts, we'll try to feed them back as quickly as possible.
And as for the roles, I've quickly whizzed through the event support manager role and basically reworded it to say advisor, where it used to be, conduct or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
without having had a look, that sounds like it makes good sense. And yeah.
So I think the duties of officers might be something we want to come back to. If particularly the Drupal Scotland guys could have a whiz through and make any comments on anything they're not comfortable with, that would be awesome, because it'd just be easier to deal with. If it's just comments in the Google Doc, we can then just respond fairly quickly.
And equally, if there's a thought we have from, do you know what, we found X in our past history, maybe that's relevant here. Yeah, we'll obviously feed that in as well, of course. So, it's always joys to be had in running committees and so on and so forth.
All right. I think it's really, really good that we got the constitution to a place. I don't think we can really sign anything off until the roles are sorted. But I think we're in a good place to get the roles sorted, probably by email, comment, chat, and maybe have a kind of rubber stamping exercise in a couple of weeks' time.
That sounds really cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Is the next meeting in 2 weeks today?
Can be. If people want to propose another time because this is uncomfortable, I'm also cool with that. And it was just my initial.
What I would say is I do know that this time on Friday happens to be particularly tricky for a few of the committee up here, just as it happens. So while obviously, hey, it's always difficult to find good times. If there is another day, even, it might help.
I'm probably the most.
We'll try to have one of us at least around, if that's
I'm probably the most flexible person here, so I'll just turn up whenever it is. So if somebody else wants to set the time and date, just let me know.
I mean, in all fairness, it may be that there's very limited further sort of thoughts and stuff, and it's kind of, well, actually, here's a rubber stamp just through email or whatever. So but certainly it's been a really good conversation. So firstly, thanks everyone, and I think what I'm reading now seems a lot clearer about scope and so on. It feels like much more of a fit alongside Drupal Scotland's efforts and so on.
Cool.
But
I really appreciate you coming along, Brian. That's fantastic. It's moved us along a long way having you here, so thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And Ian says hello, by the way. He was sitting next to me at the beginning of the call.
Oh, right.
Pointed your face at him, and he was like, Brian, what's he doing on the screen? Anyway, he says hello.
Cool.
I'll say your hellos back to him when I see him.
Good. Well, as I think many of you do, I need to now scoot off and get some other things done. But thanks again for everyone.
Shall we try and set a date and time in chat rather than
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's sensible.
Yeah. Great.
Brilliant.
Great. Good
Thanks,
work,
everyone.
guys. Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, bye. You too.
Take care.
Bye.
See you later.